our continuous improvement plans that are created at the sites have to align to the strategic plan. So when we talk about that alignment, that's that level of accountability, because we are going to be looking to have outcomes to the execution and actualization of the strategic plan. The board's role is to approve the money in order to get this job done.
And to do that, we need to understand what's being talked about and how we got to this point.
Yeah.
And I think the board is involved in some other aspects of the implementation too.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, anything else? Then I think we just appreciate your time and your involvement with us today, and yeah, say thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all. Thanks.
All right. That brings us up to 3D, addressing concerns raised during public comment. Is this you, Dr. Hines?
Yes,
speaking?
this is me. So thank you all for, I want to thank the principals as I have invited them to come to our study session in order to provide clarity in regards to the concerns that were brought up by teachers and parents. I think that there is a need to clarify some of where these decisions came from, because it is important that we have an understanding of how did we get here. I think that there's a lot of background information that has not been fully disclosed, that has led to the need to make some strategic decisions, not for next year, but for 2 years down the road. We are sitting in a situation where a lot of the things that are happening in public education are unprecedented. And we are in a state of preparation for the things that are unknown. We have a lot of financial variables that are questionable at this point in time. And so when we look at our finances, we have to do a true deep dive as to how we are spending monies and how we can be more efficient with the funds that we have, because we're not getting any additional funds. Let me say that again. We won't be receiving any additional funds. We are actually preparing for less financial support because of the projected deficit. That's not coming next year, no. But it's a projection that's coming from the state in the next fiscal biennial time. So there is a, what is it, 685 deficit for 27, 28 through 29. So we have to prepare for that today. We're currently sitting at a reserve of 8.27%. We've heard from our business office that that is probably 2 months of our expenses. Because that there are some things that are in place, i.e. unemployment insurance, that yes, the legislators did budget for 2 years ago. But we know that fund bucket is depleting. There hasn't been any conversations, and I haven't been keeping up lately, I've been busy. If there are plans to replenish that unemployment bucket. If they do not, we have to cover it. We have not budgeted to cover that. It will be picked up in our reserves. So we are getting we don't have the deep pockets to cover a lot of the expenses. So we have to make some real hard decisions as to how we deliver a high quality educational opportunity for each of our students. Because that's our job. With that being said, we had an opportunity to really unpack and listen to the comments that came forward through public comment in order to identify, well, what's the question? One of the things I have told principals is I heard teachers when it came to, we don't have the capacity. And I also heard that if the teachers don't have the capacity, the students may not be able to have some things. One of the things that's at my core is that students will not have that opportunity because the adults, during our transition year, won't have the capacity. So what is our plan B? So principals, go start planning. What are you going to come up with? So we're going to address some of those concerns so that we are being transparent as to how are we going to pivot during our transitional year. It is a 1-year transition to get us ultimately where the teacher said at the secondary, particularly at the high school, where they wanted to be, and that is at a block schedule. We cannot afford to run the same model for next year, which is the 5 out of 7, because we still have to provide the professional development so that the teachers can function at a high level in the block schedule. We heard today that there was transition or change fatigue. Teachers want the professional development in order to work at a high level. We need to create the time during their workday for them to get the professional development that they say that they want and need. I hear you. It is 1 year of transition. So I'm going to ask Ashley to facilitate the questions so that principals can respond.
Okay, and I believe we're trying to maintain some level of time, so we can condense it down to 8 questions total. But the first question is, how will the district support teachers given the loss of prep time?
Well, first and foremost, I think that we always want to do what's in the best interest of children. I've worked with a lot of teachers in this district over the years, and they all want to do what's in the best interest of children. And as we look at contractual time, because something that we've heard is we need more time in the classroom, right? We need more time because we don't have enough time to teach science and social studies and our literacy. So one of the things that we've really looked at is how do we gain more time? And within our current schedule, so sometimes we talk about preparation time, and sometimes we talk about student contact time. The way that our contract reads is in regard to student contact time, and we at both elementary and secondary are going to ensure that we do not exceed that student contact time for our teachers so that they do have adequate time to plan for our students. And so it will look a little bit different at the secondary than it does at the elementary, but we are projected to be 10 minutes under per day at the elementary level next year.
And so while it may seem, and just to specify, I'm also elementary, and so while it may seem that our teaching staff is losing prep time, the reality is that our teaching staff has been over-prepped for the past 3 years. And so they will have less prep time, however, they're still well within, to Dr. Maslowski's point, well within their contract time. And what happens then is that, you know, really ultimately we take the focus off of the adults, right? Because our goal is to ensure that students have what they need, and what we know is that at the elementary level we have not had, again to Dr. Maslowski's point, sufficient time to ensure that students' academic needs are met. We have not had sufficient minutes to ensure that we are teaching our core reading curriculum, our core math curriculum, and meeting the needs of science and social studies even in a transdisciplinary way at the IB schools with integrity each day. And so that is something that we feel strongly about and that we have heard from parents, that they want to ensure that students are accessing the academic rigor and that we want to see that reflected in student achievement.
I would say at the secondary level, I hear my colleagues, but I would say there's with the increase in instructional time, which is also necessary at the secondary level, there's also an increase in prep time in exchange for the supervisory time, for the supervision time. And so at the high school and middle school, staff will no longer, they will be using that time for the transition year to prep for the block split schedule rather than supervisory time, which would be spent in things like study hall, hallway duty, things of that nature. So not only are we creating space for students to be in classrooms getting content, but we're also creating that space for teachers to prep on the flip side of that and taking some of the supervisory duties away.
Yeah, I would add that in terms of what a daily schedule is looking like for teachers at the secondary level, they're not having any reduction in prep time, but they're having a reduction in additional supervision duties that they will no longer have, which was some student contact time, not like instructional preparation, if you will, but it wasn't considered to be a prep time, so we're not actually having a reduction in actual prep time for teachers with the transition to the 5.5 out of 7.
I'm sorry, can I just clarify that? So you're saying the supervision time wasn't actually prep time, that was like monitoring a study hall or hallway or something like that?
Lunchroom.
Okay, so that's why it's not actually a reduction in prep time, it's
Correct.
changing the supervision time to be
Instruction.
instruction.
Yes.
Okay.
And everyone has, like printed copies of the sample schedule. So you'll see a middle school sample, and you'll also see a high school sample. So, because sometimes we need the visuals to kind of, articulate what it would look like. So you'll see the 5 out of 7, and then you'll see the 5.5 out of 7. And what does that look like as far as a teacher's day? And we're talking about, if you can see the comparison, but you'll see that teachers will have their prep times. Prep times are also embedded. You'll also see in the 5.5 out of 7 that there's the job embedded PD that is also within the schedule. Whereas in the 5 out of 7, we won't have the capacity to have the job embedded PD. We know that we have to offer the PD. If we offer it in the 5 out of 7, that's an additional financial cost because we have to pay teachers out for their time outside of their contract in order to do the professional development. We can't control their professional development over the summer. We can offer it, but contractually we can't make teachers do professional development over the summer. So that if we offer it, we gotta pay them. That's an additional cost, so our costs are still increasing with the 5 out of 7. So again, we are planning today for 2 years from now when food is going up. I know my personal food budget is going up. I don't shop for groceries, but you get what I'm saying. But when we talk about nutrition and our nutrition services, we're currently under cost. We're running under cost, but we are anticipating the cost of our produce and groceries will go up. We have to prepare for that. Now, we know that we have contract negotiations coming up. We have to prepare for that now. So we can't wait another year of delaying, decreasing our cost. And we know that just what's being unearthed in our strategic plan, we have to create opportunities for our students to have a sense of belonging, to feel a part of our community, and that we are preparing them for their choice not the choices that we have to limit them to, because we don't have the financial resources to offer the different opportunities that we currently offer. So we have to continue to have the choice. I don't want us to get pigeonholed to the point where we have to now start trimming programming because we don't have the financial resources to continue to offer different academic opportunities for students. Then we really have to grapple with declining enrollment, not because of the low birth rates that's happening throughout the state of Minnesota, but because we don't have the choices that we had in the past because we have to make severe budget cuts. Again, we have to prepare now for the future. So,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna ask another question. Corey was saying that and Maria were saying for elementary, it'd be 10 minutes under contracted student contact time. Will it also be within the contracted student contact time at the secondary?
Yeah, the current, for our schedule at the high school, the current instructional time, and this is time in front of kids teaching like content, is 250 for a 1.0 FTE. And that's well within the instructional minutes on the contract. And then moving to a 5.5 and a 7 would increase that by 25 minutes on average daily over the course of the whole school year. So after we get over the course of the whole school year.
And do you know what the contracted time is?
The contracted time is 330 minutes.
Oh,
Yeah.
So there would still be 25 minutes below contract.
There's
Actually, no, it's
55
not. I'm
minutes.
sorry, I'm an idiot. It's late, I got up early, okay, I saw the 30 after I said that, so it would be 55.
You also have to take into consideration that because it's the 5.5, that's only for half the year. So they'll be teaching one extra class for about 95 days, give or take, for half the year. So it's not even a whole additional class for the whole year. Again, trying to put that in context of what that looks like for the schedule.
Sorry, just to be clear, so the contracted contact time is the same as the total amount of time for the day, or that 330 is not the total minutes for the day?
No, it's
That's
not.
just the contracted total.
The contract is 330 student contact.
Okay,
But the total
And
time
that
for
is
a
either
day is
instructional or supervisory
Okay.
minutes.
I see, thank you.
because teachers are entitled to an hour of prep and a 30-minute duty-free lunch each day.
Gotcha.
So that's 90 minutes on top of the 330.
This is a great segue into the next question, which is, what is the impact of these schedule changes on teacher-student relationships, instructional quality, and overall teacher workload? One of the things that we have heard about is concerns about time for writing letters of recommendations for students, time to do clubs and activities, or leading athletic activities or tutoring.
I guess I'm gonna start maybe by asking a question. I guess I would be curious to know like what the context of the teacher-student relationships part of the question was. Only because, I mean, I will speak for the teachers at the middle school where they're very, very good at forming relationships with students. And I do know that there has been some concern, like I'll have an extra class, will I have time to form relationships? And I fully believe that yes, they will, because we also have teachers at the middle school that actually teach 10 classes right now of 30 students, and they're very much able to form relationships with students. So I have complete faith that that is going to happen. I will also say that I had a conversation with the teachers today, and I said with the additional extra section, it's really important that we are thinking about how these teaching sections are assigned. We need to limit preps. We need to ensure that we're not asking a teacher to teach a course that they've never taught before and they have to learn a new content for a year. We're not gonna do that. So we have to be really thoughtful about how we're assigning the additional teaching section so that we're not adding the burden of having to learn new content. It needs to be something that teachers are familiar with to the best of our ability that we're gonna be able to schedule. Let's be humane about this. And then additionally, part of what we are doing to prepare for the block is how are we using our time in our classroom? Who's bearing the cognitive load? Who's doing the work? We want to be shifting it to the students are doing the work where the teacher is facilitating on the side, able to have the conversations with the students, to form those relationships with the students, but also how are you using that time to assess student work in the moment instead of bringing home piles of paper and having to do it in the evening or on the weekend. And even if we weren't transitioning next year, that would still be a focus of what we're working on, is how are we to center the student experience in the classroom and also improve our teacher workflow and not get bogged down in some of those things that we can be more mindful of in the moment and actually, multitask, talk to students, see where they're at, give them feedback in the moment, jot down what they are, like in your grade book in the moment, and move on and not have to be doing the paperwork afterwards. So I guess that's kind of my thinking, that would be my answer around that question. As far as the clubs and athletics, we pay stipends for teachers to do that after school, and it is up to them as to whether they feel they have the capacity or not. And so we, if we needed to find an advisor, I know we partner really closely with community education around after-school opportunities. So we'll kind of work that out as that comes. But teachers that are really passionate about working with students after school, they do get a stipend to do that. And I know that actually brings many of them a lot of joy. So, but I always honor what teachers feel like they need to take care of themselves personally, first and foremost. So we'll work that out as it comes.
Can I ask a couple of follow-up questions unless I'm interrupting?
Sorry, I kind of just went.
I guess I have a really quick question. At both the middle school and the high school, will students continue to have advisory or connections or whatever you call it? So is that an opportunity for teachers to form relationships with their students in a different way that is outside of their instructional?
Yeah.
So yes,
The whole premise behind having our Park Connections at the high school, it's called Park Connections advisory, is really to integrate in that social emotional learning, to focus on restorative practice, to integrate in college and career readiness. And we also, this year, started What I Need or Win. So students get to go and get support, academic support from other teachers.
that was my question, was about win time.
Yeah.
My second question is, my understanding of cultural responsive practices, is that what we call it still? I never remember what you call it in St. Louis Park. But isn't that, the cultural responsive literacy, hasn't that been a focus at all of the grades?
Yeah.
Right? And my understanding of that is a central component is developing relationship with students when you implement that in the classroom. So there's an opportunity for teachers to continue to deepen their relationship with their students using that, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
We're not going away from that.
Is it called culturally? Do you call it culturally? Well, I need to get this term
Culturally
right.
relevant pedagogy.
Relevant, thank you, that was the R word.
Sometimes we call it culturally relevant and responsive.
Anything else that anyone wants to add to that one?
I was just going to talk about the letters of recommendation because I know that has been a curiosity of some of the teachers, and I want to acknowledge that change is hard, and that I really believe that this is about how we all come together as a community and collaborate, right, to have the best outcomes for our students, and also not that doesn't negate the fact that we also need to take care of our teachers. And so, and the reason I'm talking about the letters of recommendation is because we only get to the best outcomes if we're as collaborative as possible. And so if that's a concern, my teachers have come to me and said, you know, I have just a lot of letters of recommendation to write. What can we do about this? And we work together to make sure that they have the time necessary in order to get that done to support our students, because we want our students, we don't want our students to be impacted because we don't have the time or capacity to do that. So I think we need to keep that in mind as our end outcome as we're moving into a year of transition, that this is really about how we collaborate with each other to create the best outcome that we all believe in, right? We all believe in, and that's student-centered, but doesn't dismiss the fact that we need to take care of our teachers as well.
Has it ever come up in negotiations? Has Pat brought it up to you?
No.
Yeah, I was curious about that too. Like, now because it came up from several people a couple of weeks ago, like, have you had that conversation with your staff about, like, I mean, that one makes my brain break because that is about individual students. Yes. Right? Like, we can get someone to coach track. But writing a letter of recommendation for an individual student is a very fundamentally individual act. So, how do we make that happen, right? Like, how do we make that happen?
And I will tell you that there hasn't been that many cases where staff have come to me that they've said, you know, I really need some time. Can we figure out a way to create that time and space so that I can do that? And the answer is yes, because I'm always going to put our students first. I'm always going to like take care of you so that you can get what you need to provide for our students. So that is not even like, it's a non-negotiable. We will do that for our staff.
Should that come up during negotiations, and this next round, we will certainly address that and make sure that the students are at the center of that, and that we're working with the teachers to accommodate.
Because we do know there are districts where that is compensated for in various ways in contracts.
I'm going to keep us on secondary since we're getting into it a little bit here. One of the questions that has come up has been around alternative scheduling options, especially as we look at a transition year before moving to block. So what alternative scheduling options were considered besides the 5.5 model, and how were these decisions made?
Well, I will just speak. So I'm just gonna speak transparently. We would need to change student programming and the model for students at the secondary level if we were to move to anything else but a 5.5 out of 7. As Dr. Hines had said, like the current state of budget reductions does not allow us to continue the continuum of service that we currently provide at the high school. Not moving into a 5.5 out of 7 with the current budget reductions that we're experiencing at the high school would require us to reduce programming. So there would be some additional hard decisions. So I just wanted to start with that. But I think it would actually make 2 transitions, right? We'd have 2 transitions if we transition to a different model. It would transition our students twice, which in my belief, that is not what's in the best interest of our students as we try to prepare for the block schedule. And so I think it also does not free up the time for folks, whether that's teachers, you know, other support staff, admin. We are all transitioning. This is not just one group of folks. Our students, our families, we're all transitioning into this block model, and so we all need to be afforded the time to adequately prepare. And without changing drastically the model that our students are currently receiving, which is their 7-period day, right? And so there wasn't a consideration of another model because we felt like that would be multiple transitions. And we need to stay the course, provide that space for people to have additional prep to prepare for the transition to block in 26, 27.
Where did the decision about block come from?
Well, this has been, before my tenure, block at the high school, from what I know, has been something that they've really supported and wanted. There was a focus group that I think was a district level focus group and task force that was working towards a block, and then COVID hit and it kind of went under the radar when we transitioned back. But our teachers have been doing extensive research on what they believe are the benefits of a block schedule. I'm just trying to find some of my notes. So some of the pros of a block schedule that came out of some of their research was that it's a delivery model that allows for additional student support, or that delivery model just allows us to, in the moment, provide that feedback, right? Or if there's a lab, we can instruct and then we can go into our lab and we don't have to like plan for a separation in our plans. It better supports our our students that receive IEP services. There's less transitions in the day, which leads to decreased discipline referrals. There are better routines put into place. Students and teachers have better relationships. The community, the culture and climate, actually, we see a positive impact on culture and climate, and it benefits our multilingual learners. So my team of teachers presented to me in the fall about moving to a block after some extensive conversations we have had over the course of the years. And they presented this, it was brilliant how they presented, and I was like, there's no way but for me to lean in and say, yes, how do we support this? I think there's also, on the flip side of that, what we need to consider as we transition, have a transition year, and some of that is, what is, and this is not limited, but what is the professional development? There's a different delivery model in a block schedule than there is on a current 7-period day. We have to consider what does co-teaching look like for our special education teachers and our multilingual learner programs. We have to think about course design. We're currently revamping the entire secondary, both middle school and high school are going through and looking at standards and what does standards-based grading look like and what is, how are we maintaining and designing standards-based culturally relevant pedagogy and curriculum units. So you have to consider course design, scope and sequence, and lesson planning. We have to rewrite every IEP. You have to go back and make sure that you are meeting the minutes adequately. And if a student needs daily service, we have to go and rewrite them to reflect what their IEP currently says to a block schedule, which is it's a heavy lift. We have to also have conversations. Most likely we'll be having a conversation with the board because we have to look at our graduation requirements and our credits. We also have to look at our course registration guides because in the research that I've done, and I've met with a few people as I'm like trying to support the block, it was really about, I remember him saying to me, when you look at your course registration guide, there's courses that you haven't even designed yet and you don't even know what they are, right? Like, we are going to have to do a deep dive in like what we currently offer and what we're going to offer because the block schedule changes the pathways, right? For good, but we have to consider all of those things and be prepared. And then also in the research that I've done, it recommended at least 1 year of transition. So I just want to be clear about, yeah, it's hard, it's a change. The 5.5 is not popular. And also it is something that will help us get like to the intended outcome that everybody is in support of.
Thank you. I want to also name something here because my understanding is the 5.5 out of 7 is a less expensive model than the block schedule, but that we are committed to doing what's in the best interest of our students and what has been recommended to us by our teachers, which is why we are still planning to transition to that block. I think that's another important component.
And from an operational standpoint, the transition year also gives us an opportunity to unpack and really dive into our spending. and how we are spending monies. And how we are spending monies in partnership with other institutions that are educating our students. And are we doing our due diligence in ensuring that the education of our students is happening within our four walls so that we can retain those funds here, as opposed to paying an additional institution to carry some of our instructional load. So it gives us an opportunity to look at our efficiencies and be able to redirect some of our practices so that we can be more efficient financially.
I just spent a good 2.5-hour meeting today with my leaders in my district about the online, because the impact, the negative impact on us as teachers, but also on the district as an institution and the budget is vast. So I've asked Patricia if she could share with me the cost of the online classes, how many students are taking online classes, what are we doing, first of all, why are they taking online classes? Because that's concerning. Number two, we also did a deep dive into the policy, into the statute regarding online classes. Is there any, do we have we jokingly started calling it the online czar, but the statute requires that the district provide a person who investigates all online programs to make sure that they're meeting state standards. Because the fact of the matter is, I have students who are not engaging in our curriculum because the pathway online, and I'm just gonna say it, is a hell of a lot easier than our classes. In the online, they're not meeting state standards. So my curiosity, and you don't need to answer this today, but I am curious about how much it's costing us. I'm curious about how many students are taking it, because the exodus in my building, and I know this because I'm an elective teacher for the last period of the day, it's like they're out the door and they're coming up with the ways. So I would be curious about what, not tonight, but moving forward, the cost.
We have the information for you, we can bring it, we can provide it to you, and we also have a plan. We'll be meeting with Dr. Hines and Dr. Robinson, and I don't know, a couple others in this room.
So we are looking at language in my district for the student handbook. So I would be curious. Because they're not, I mean, as a parent, I do not believe that my child, who took 2 online classes, because there weren't classes available at the high school for her to take. She took a PE class and a photography class, and she absolutely was like, great, Mom, I didn't have to do any work. This is so fantastic. And that's not acceptable. I don't accept that as a parent, poor child, and I also don't accept that as an educator. I don't. That's not why I got into this business, and I don't think we should be helping kids. PSEO is totally different. We're taking an online PSEO class. My child is taking 2 next year. She'll be sitting in the media center taking them because we've been a part of the school day and she wants to be a part of the building. That is a separate, that's not what I'm talking about. Just to make that clear.
No, I didn't think we were talking about that. I mean, to get back to the preparation for the block and thinking all of that through and thinking about how we advertise courses to students, right? Like, my students taking PSEO because they could take math in the fall and another math class in the spring. So now they've got 2 years of math in 1 year. That is something you could do in a block. You couldn't do it today in St. Louis Park.
It also allows us, for students that might struggle in a course, or maybe don't pass a course, for us to offer that support. If they didn't pass it in the fall, we can then revisit it, and they could possibly get that support in the spring, right? Depending upon the model, because we haven't decided upon the model yet.
But I just want to appreciate Ashley's naming the fear and the lack of trust. Because as we heard from in consulting, there is a lack of trust. And there is a fear that we're talking about moving to a block schedule, but then we'll find that we won't. So I would hope that that is something that we're working on to build that trust. But then also from a perspective of a teacher, you know, I went from a block schedule to a 6-period day, to a block schedule, to a 6-period day, and then to like, middle school, we tried, I don't know if your kids were at the middle school at the time, but we had an 8-period day, and then we went to a 7-period day, so like, I understand the messiness, and then the difficulty of providing professional development during the summer should not be taken lightly. This is really difficult, because teachers don't, and rightfully so, why would they want to? But also, I just, I did not, with all of the transitions that the schools that I was in, we were never provided. We were never given the time for PD, and have that transition year. It was just, I think we had 2 days in our workshop week about how to teach in a block schedule, and then they were like, here you go.
I had to, my only year full-on teaching was teaching a block schedule. I came out as a brand new teacher, and I had to teach 3 different classes, and I didn't have any special supports for that. So it's like, good luck. Have at it. You teach for 90 minutes now. Keep the kids entertained. Anyway.
Can I just go back to something that,
You can say Virginia.
forgiveness then. I just need to, like, I have to stand in my purpose and support and advocate for my teachers. We cannot go back. We have to go into a block schedule. We cannot change our mind. It is that important. Like, I am standing here saying, we cannot make a different decision. In 26, 27, the decision is we have to go into a block schedule.
And with that said, when it comes to budgeting, that is the priority.
But Colin just pointed out something that Melissa had said earlier. As I believe you have right of assignment, do principals have right of assignment?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, yes, I'm very happy to hear that you're collaborating with teachers about who is teaching what. But as a new teacher in a block schedule, I was teaching 7 preps. That's killing, that'll kill a teacher. So, I mean, I think that,
Yeah.
but, and I don't know how, thank you, Lanisha, for saying that we're going to the block schedule, but I'm also hoping that there will be ways that you communicate to the board and to Dr. Hines that you are taking some consideration into not overwhelming, particularly our new to the profession teachers. Like, why are we giving them the worst schedules? Because 7 preps is too much.
I would agree. I mean, we try to, at the middle school, even in our current system, limit the number of preps that teachers have. And for some elective teachers, it's hard.
It's hard to be a business teacher.
But, to be very mindful of that. Because I think that's also, when you're teaching a course multiple times, it's also how you improve, because you get to improve on it each time that you teach. I think, I appreciate the opportunity to work with teachers. Like, we've got a lot of energy generating at the middle school, and we're going to be forming a committee to really look at like what's important to our community, what do we need to prioritize in a schedule, how do we build a schedule that meets those needs, especially considering our MYP and our IB programming, where we want to be able to ensure that students are able to take music every year and also meet their art requirements and also have design, and sort of really take time to say like what's important to us, and that would include also getting input from our students and our parents as well, and to be able to design a schedule that's going to meet the needs, as well as offering, my hope would be some support time every day for students to get a variety of different support and how they might need it. So there's a lot of opportunities here to meet student needs in a wide variety of ways, both within the Tier 1 classroom, but also like as a building as well. And so I think it's a really exciting opportunity to be able to really be student-centered and meet the needs, and it will be a heavy lift to do it, but I think it will be worth it. And I do believe that teaching in a block is going to be able to help us actualize more of what we're hoping to do with culturally relevant pedagogy. I mean, to be honest, a 44-minute class period at the middle school, you welcome in them, you say hello, you do a warm-up activity, you give them some instructions, and then it's like goodbye, and so just that opportunity to be able to go deeper with longer periods of time to form those relationships, I think we're gonna see dividends from that. So I do believe that taking the time to really invest and do this well is gonna pay off.
Principal Kalinowski just touched a little bit on process moving forward, but I want to also open to some of our elementary principals. What role do teachers and staff play in the decision-making process, and how is their input being honored moving forward?
So last year, good evening board and cabinet members. Thank you for allowing me to be here. I just wanted to share last spring, the PE design team met with us, and they had some pretty specific guidelines and wishes and hopes. And the principals, elementary, I want to stress, we met in May, I believe, and it was just, we didn't think we could pull it off. So we want to honor their voices. These are PE teachers across the elementary buildings that were sharing their plans with us, their hopes. So now we have taken that into consideration in the draft schedule for the elementary in regards to having single sections of PE so that the students can have more individualized time with the specialist, the PE teacher, 50-minute class periods instead of having up to almost 60 kids with 2 adults. That's a lot. At some of the elementaries, there's been increase in, there's just natural, I run into you, we get hurt, we hit heads, we gotta go to the nurse, we have to check on things. We're hoping that will decrease. That's our hope and our expectation. But we're honoring the teachers' voices, and I'm really proud of that. Also with the schedule that we, the elementary principals, have put together, put together, that there will be less transitions. You will go to a specialist class, and you will go back to the class. Or a teacher will drop them off, the classroom teacher will pick them up. Before, there was 2 specialist classes where the specialist teachers in some of our buildings were transitioning. So those 30-minute classes were even less. So now, in essence, yes, it's a decrease in number of PE classes, but there's single sections. So there's, 24 students instead of up to 55 students in a class. And I'm really I'm really happy for the students and the teacher to be able to share life skill sports. We also have heard from the athletic director in regards to high school sports and how we have a decrease. We don't have very many students, female students of color, that are interested in sports. And we're hoping that by developing this, they can get into something because that teacher has more one-on-one time with the actual sport. I know we've had, at the elementary, we've had lacrosse come in, we've had ultimate frisbee come in. Those are some of those sports. We've had partnerships with the high school, so I'm really looking forward to that. Another thing, I know actually you didn't, do you mind if I add to this? Another thing that I am really excited about is this schedule that we have built up is really open to up to 24 sections. None of our elementary buildings have 24 sections. So by me saying that, specifically at Susan Lindgren, we've been lucky enough to add, because of our enrollment has went up this year, We've added in August additional teachers, which is a great thing, but then it kind of puts a mess in the schedule. So I pride myself in having grade level teachers have a common prep time so they can collaborate together. In this schedule, they will have that 50-minute common planning collaboration time. Also, we need to do a better job with our ML and special ed teachers in regards to having time to plan with those gen ed teachers. So we will have that time, and we are planning on building that in as well.
And I think going back to the question that you posed, Ashley, to how have we gathered teacher input? We've been gathering teacher input a lot since we transitioned 3 years ago, in that we had additional specialist time. So 2 days a week, students have 90 minutes of specialist time. That's a lot of transitions, and especially if they're not back to back. I've worked with elementary kids for a long time. You know, walking 5 and 6 year olds down the hall, you lose 5 minutes on both sides, right? And so if you look at our schedules, there's a lot of choppiness, right? So we might, in an ideal world, you'd have a 90 to 120 minute block for literacy all in one fall swoop, right? That can't happen for every classroom because of the way that our specialists are set up right now. And so resultingly, by going to 50 minutes, it's going to decrease the amount of transitions and open up those blocks of time for us to dig in deeper with our kids. And that's something that our teachers have been asking for. Like, we don't have enough time during the day to do everything that we need to get done so that our kids have access to state standards, right? And so I'm really excited about that. And so how have teachers provided input? We've been providing input for multiple years. It's been an ongoing conversation. And then moving forward too, it will be like anything, we're gonna monitor it, we're gonna make tweaks like we always do, right? There are gonna be things that, unintended consequences that are gonna come out of this schedule, we're gonna be like, huh, didn't see that coming, right? And we're gonna revisit that. But we're really excited about common prep times every day for grade level teachers. We're really excited about less transitions, really excited for more time in the classroom.
Yeah, so I heard from both elementary and secondary about sort of the block or just longer time periods being beneficial for our multilingual learners and our students receiving IEP services. So, I saw Dr. Robinson react to both of those. So I'm just wondering if you would just say a bit about why I saw you snapping, so I just wanted.
First off, I want to say thank you to this group. This, it is overwhelming work, right? I always say it's hard work, but it's hard work. And if we always remain student-centered, we're going to get to our goal. And I was just thinking about the way back in July, how we talked about the introduction, the goals, the objectives, the implementation, the execution, and here we are. Here we are. We're actually doing the work. So when I hear about this is what we're doing, it's something that I envisioned when I first got here. That SPED, Gen Ed, our babies are Gen Ed first. And they need that time. Our special ed teachers need time to collaborate, to plan, co-teach with Gen Ed ML's teachers, right? But I also look at it as a way where those TD&E rubrics, how it all aligns with this work. IDEA tells us that our kids need to have free, appropriate public education. And we're doing that here at St. Louis Park. Is it easy? She just mentioned how we're going to need to amend our IEPs. Myself, along with our 2 assistant directors, along with the entire SPED lead teams, we're willing to do that work because we know, again, it's needed and it's going to be valuable to both go back to Seesaw. Our families need more input. They need to know what we're doing. Thinking about the report cards, all of this is in alignment. And it also goes back to, we have students who are receiving services for, thinking about the pull out and the push in. We will now have that opportunity to say, during our reading blocks, instead of us going to our SLPs, they can come into the classroom and provide direct and indirect services in those small groups. What does that look like? It means that we have to come together to say, what's going on at Susan Lindgren? Let's see what's going on at Aquila, so that we can get everyone together to say, they rolled it out over at Aquila, let's see what's taking place at PSI, just to make sure that we're doing everything that's beneficial for our kids. Peter Hobart, oh, yep, they have a phenomenal SEL program. Let's see how we can make this work so that when our families, when our students come into the space, they know that our teachers, we're one St. Louis Park. And we're going to continue to build upon that. So that's why I'm over here celebrating with and I see a few SPED teachers in the audience, and I'm like, we got this. And I tell them that in a lot of ways, that you call me, we're here. We're going to come, because that's where we're trying to build that trust, but we're also trying to show that we're going to collaborate in a way where everyone knows that we feel supported in every department, whether it be ML, SPED, regardless, we're all going to be there to support. So yes, thank you.
Can I ask a question? One of the things that came up, or has come up in the emails that we've received, and in conversations that I've had with other parents of elementary age students, is the concern about the need to be able to move our bodies. I'm standing, it's not because I need to, but it's hard for me to sit for 2.5 hours. But, so can you talk a little bit about what intentionality is gonna go into creating space for our elementary age students who can't, who need more time to be able to move their bodies, and if we're eliminating the daily access to gym. I know we're gonna have the recess time, but so how are we supporting our teachers to be able to create space for that movement?
I can start, because I think this is an opportunity where we haven't always tooted our own horns, right? Because we have a lot going on already. We just haven't necessarily told our larger community all the ways that kids are moving throughout the day, right? At the elementary level, we've got at PSI, I'll speak to PSI because that's what I know best, right? In every room, we have sensory boxes. We teach kids about the furniture that we have in the room. We get up, we move around. We can move the entire room in 60 seconds with furniture. To make circles, we're constantly moving furniture all day, right? I think I heard you say, Sarah, that you'd like to move around. I have a hard time sitting also, right? Kids have a super hard time sitting. And our elementary teachers know that. Within our building, we've got sensory walks. We have sensory paths. We have different spaces that kids can go if they're feeling dysregulated. We have, as you mentioned, the daily recess. But additionally, it's also about, all right, let's stand up. Let's do some breathing exercises together as a class. We're going to now transition to math. And what I need you to do is I need you to go grab that notebook over there. And we're going to walk, but we're going to do it walking like elephants, right? Those are those things that I think we haven't always talked about, all the ways that kids are moving throughout the day. And it's also a moment that we need to pause as a community too and go, why are we not sharing that? And also, what ideas are we doing cross classroom, cross grade levels? And I think that helps when people are in each other's rooms too. And so it's providing space for people to see other things that are happening. But as a person who's in our classrooms every single day, I see a lot of opportunities for kids with movement. Yes, it is true that we won't have a 30-minute physical education block every day. And if you come to our gymnasiums where you see 50 to 60 kids in that gymnasium all running around, they're not really moving a whole lot, right? So if our goal is student movement, we'll have 50 minutes of dedicated time once every 4 days, and it'll be skill-based. I heard Melissa talk about 44 minutes, right? What does that look like for middle school? For elementary too, it's 5 minutes to get them in, 5 minutes. Really, we're doing an activity for 15 minutes, right? And so for a longer period of time, we can go more in depth. But then within the classroom, we are gonna have longer blocks, and so we are gonna have to think about how are we being intentional about that movement. But I think it's something that, for sure at the elementary level, that we've always been cognizant of. Anyone that's taught elementary kids knows they can't sit for extended periods of time or other things happen, right? So,
Well, and I've had the opportunity, I mean, I'm asking the question so
Yeah.
folks can hear the answer, but I have this opportunity to walk through schools with you all, right? And I take that opportunity as often as I can, and, you know, I see students moving every time I come in, and I'm thinking about like music class, right? Like, every time I go to music class, like, they're dancing. There's some, you know, some sort of dancing happening, right? And there's like real intentionality around that movement. Talent development, they're constantly moving to different tables, you know, and so I've had the opportunity to see it in a lot of the buildings, but you know, this does come back to how are we sharing our story about what that looks like. I've also seen what gym class looks like, and I have had concerns about that as well, you know, and so I appreciate that. I think we need to create opportunities for folks to have windows into what this looks like in our buildings. Because I know there's a lot, change is hard, but there's a lot of fear around this, particularly at the elementary age. Because that's my parent group, I've heard a lot about it. And I have kids too, right, who are in that age group who need to move their bodies. But I feel confident in the intentionality behind this and what we're doing, but I hope that can start to be communicated out differently.
So I can speak to the process at Aquila, and I just want to address, you know, I received a couple of emails of concern from parents who have students who have IEP. So IEP minutes will not be affected. So if students have gross motor breaks in their IEPs, that's absolutely not affected. And in conjunction with that, we have had our OT, Kamini Sura. She went through all of our classes at the beginning of the year and just did sort of an audit as to what was happening in terms of developmentally appropriate movement and developmentally appropriate seated time. So we have at the kindergarten level, kids are sitting for no more than 10 to 15 minutes at a time, and then they're up and moving, and that increases incrementally as you get older in developmentally appropriate ways for students to be able to focus, or who are able to focus for a little bit longer, but also within that, and to Corey's point, we have brain breaks built in, we have intentional movement built in, because the goal of this increased academic time, so this increased time for core content, is that students are learning. And what our teachers know, because they are skilled professionals, is that we're not going to be successful with that if we're not building movement. And so as we think about, you know, multiple intelligences, kinesthetic intelligence is one of the 8, not 9 intelligences. And so that is built into what the way the teachers are planning their universally designed lessons. So I think that's really important to keep in mind, that our classroom teachers asked for this time to be able to meet students' needs academically, to be able to meet the minute requirements of our various curricula across disciplines, and with that request comes the knowledge that they also are building in the time. And so to Corey's point too, Dr. Meslowski's point as well, we always say at Aquila, we use all parts of the animal. Like, we utilize our hallways to a great extent. All of the things, we are moving as much as possible. So you might see kids doing a math lesson, counting the squares on the wall, like, so out moving through the school. So that's something that's definitely happening. And then the other thing that I think we haven't talked about is what it means for students to have intentional time in PE where they are seen by the PE teacher on a very individual basis, and acknowledged and able to move more. I know we've mentioned that, but the other thing is that within all of our, and we've talked about this at Aquila, within all of our gymnasiums, there's the ability to drop a curtain. And with one class, you can have PE on one side, and if there's another class that just needs 5 minutes to come in and move, we've talked about that as a possibility, and teachers are intrigued by that. And also, I will say at Aquila, now we will have this extra space, this flex space, this room, where we will have the priority being developmentally adaptive PE, which has been occurring heretofore on the back of the stage, and we'll now have plenty of room for that, but that's only an hour and a half to 2 hours each day. So that leaves 4 to 4.5 hours a day when kids can go in and be doing a literacy activity that involves movement, big movement. And so we've just talked about how that can look, how we'll leverage in the non-inclement month of the year, outdoor spaces to ensure that students are outside doing that learning. So, you know, I know that we do have concerns because physiologically, we are no longer in the business of creating cogs and factory workers, right? We're creating thinkers and learners and training students for jobs that we can't even conceive, right? For careers that we can't even conceive. And so we know that part of that is ensuring that we're meeting the needs of the whole child. And so we're thinking really deeply about that. And I just want to say I'm really thankful for the parents that have reached out to me specifically about PE, because among them we have parents who are also outside OTs who are offering suggestions. And so we are open to all of those suggestions, and I think our classroom teachers and our own occupational therapists are a wealth of knowledge. So I feel really confident that we're going to be able to meet those needs.
Yeah. I think just to build on that, our teachers crave more PD. I mean, we've heard that across consulting. And so having opportunities to build in, whether it is, we use Move Mindfully at Peter Hobart, and so every staff meeting we spend a chunk of time doing a new Move Mindfully so that they can take that back to their classroom and implement that in their classroom. We talked about culturally relevant pedagogy. Culturally relevant pedagogy oftentimes requires movement. I can talk about in a kindergarten classroom when they are tapping out sounds to create words. They literally hop on the cushions across, and they do it as a group. So each student gets an opportunity to lead the group by hopping across the mats to create a word, a sound, and sound it out. So having those intentional opportunities for our staff to learn and building that within professional development are going to be critical as we think about movement. All of the principals would agree movement is important. None of us are disagreeing with that at all. We agree wholeheartedly, and we need to find the time and space to make sure our students can succeed academically as well as social and emotional.
So I have a question because my Move Mindful came up and I had that written down, but I've heard it before. But can we elaborate on who received that training, and is there more of that training to come?
Yeah, at least at Peter Hobart, I know that I sent our connections coordinator and our social worker to Move Mindfully training. It's been called Yoga Calm before, 1,000 Petals. It's had a couple iterations. And so I know that they went last year on a grant, and then I chose to send them as part of our professional development funds this year with the intention that every staff meeting, they are bringing that training to our staff. I think it's really hard when we do a one and done type of training. It's too much to absorb, and so how do we continue to build that over time and offer new ideas to our staff over time around whether it's a Move Mindfully activity, whether it's a culturally relevant pedagogy practice. Lots of different ways that we can continue to implement that, not only in bursts of PD, but then also over time so that teachers have the capacity and different ideas that are constantly coming to them.
And one of the things that we're going to build for next year is the concept of on-demand PD, where teachers can have access to 15, 20-minute professional development mini lessons to give them some ideas and tools as to different concepts. So we will have some on movement, mindful movement. We will have some on differentiated instruction. We will have some on scaffolding, data, how to analyze data, so that when they feel the need to brush up on their skills, they don't have to wait to a day of the week where they're offering PD, or they don't have to wait until that all-day PD day. They can access it on demand at their need. So again, I have heard the need and the want for access to professional development, but we live in an age of responsiveness where things are ever ready. I can Google, I can search, and I can watch a YouTube video. But how are we taking the best that we have internally and giving our teachers that platform to showcase the things that they are doing and it's working in their spaces so that they can share it with their colleagues? So we are building that catalog, and we're starting with how we kick off the year. Our kickoff of the year is going to be a conference style for our teachers where they get choice as to what professional development that they want to, or workshop they want to attend when we welcome our teachers back.
I have something very quick before we move off movement, and that is just that it strikes me that this is an opportunity for collaboration with community ed. We did that when we changed start times a few years ago, kind of like community ed was able to say, okay, we're gonna like scaffold around this new schedule for elementary. Same thing here, right? Like we have tons of programming coming through community ed, and that strikes me. I mean, this is applies to all levels, but especially in elementary, right? We can add activity on the outside of the day rather than all of it having to be inside the day.
And partners with the park district and some things like that too. Yeah, I think we probably have a few more questions to get through.
More thing.
Yeah, I wanted to
Especially
say one thing.
Okay, you too.
Well, you can go ahead.
No, it strikes me as I'm listening that, I'm thinking about my husband. My husband is not an educator, but he's married to one. And so when my daughter would come home and she would tell him about her day, he thinks of education as he experienced it. And I think many of our parents and many of my generation think of education as they experienced it. And education is very different. I'm going into year 30, well, it's year 29, so I'll be year 30. And I know. And it's different, even like by decade, it's almost changed so much. And so I think that is part of the communication piece, is that many, and it's not a bad thing. My husband just thought of school the way he experienced it. So when we would go to parent-teacher conferences, and he was like, oh my God, did you know all this stuff? And I'd be like, yeah. But, right, so like they're learning too, and they're understanding. Like it doesn't surprise me that it doesn't surprise me when I listen to this, but it can be very surprising for somebody who hasn't experienced it.
Absolutely.
I think the only other thing I was going to add, thank you, was that I think about my personal experience of like in PE, I never learned how to swing a bat. You know, and it's some of that stuff that I think what I'm hearing is like you played baseball, right? But you weren't like instructed on how to swing better. You were teased, or the kids who excelled in those areas excelled, and you never got to build the skills. Now I know how to swing a tennis racket, and can I build off of something like that? Perhaps. But so I think about those opportunities too, and I think about that too when you talk about having more dedicated time, or if you read what is in our state guidelines for what we should be doing is developing motor skills, not just getting activity, but developing motor skills and strengths and things like that, and getting people to understand what it means to have that accuracy, or how you get that accuracy, or do whatever to do that. So anyway, so I'm excited about that. But.
And so I did a check-in with Dr. Maslowski, and we did a WASP round. And I was like, we're going to PE. Had an opportunity to talk to the PE teacher, and one of the things he said was, I'm excited to teach the kids how to ride bikes. He has a set of bikes that he has access to, but the students they can't really take advantage of the opportunity to learn how to ride a bike or to take a bike ride during that PE time. One, because there are not enough bikes for the 60 kids that were there. Two, there's not enough time to get them on a trail. And one of the things that I appreciate about St. Louis Park, there are some beautiful bike trails. And how are we helping our students explore their city so that they can love the place that they live, so that they have a desire to come back, so that we can continue that generational, the generational longevity of families that's currently here, that they don't want to go and live in Minnetonka because they love the beauty about St. Louis Park. So again, as we think about how our students are experiencing our earliest learners in early education, and how our families are having their exposure with the engagement with the teachers, how that translates into how they are experiencing kindergarten, first grade, second grade, because that leads into the desire to continue the trajectory into the middle school. And as we continue to nurture and develop, I went to a sixth grade social studies class, and I was like, what grade are we in? I literally had to tap a student. I said, what grade are you in? He said, I'm in sixth grade. I'm like, the level of engagement and conversations that our students are having as a sixth grader, in most settings, you see that in 10. So our students are accelerating up to the high school where we have all of these grand opportunities. So we have to understand that we are moving away of a system of schools, and we are developing a school system. That what I do as a kindergarten teacher impacts what Clarence can do as a first grade teacher. That impacts what Sarah can do as a second grade teacher. And it accelerates up. So we talk about our core values and we talk about that collective responsibility. And it's not just about me, but it's how am I preparing because every day we engage with these impressionable humans and we are leaving a piece of us with them. And that is our individual impression and our legacy that we are leaving with that student. It can be positive and it can be negative. We, as the adults, have that choice. But it also impacts that next teacher and how they experience the development and learning and facilitating and molding of that student. So we talk about how are we ensuring that we have true alignment, that from site to site, from grade level to grade level, so that we are ensuring that each, because I believe in the power of words, each is not all. Each means I am getting to know Taylor and what drives Taylor, because I'm gonna make sure I connect with him. Did you see that ball game? Did you go to that play? Wasn't that phenomenal? That's that connection. So every student is seen. Every student is respected. Every student is supported where they are so that they can actualize their being and who they want to become in the future. So with that being said, yes, next year is going to feel different. Yes. Will we do what we need to do as district administrators to ensure that our students are not lacking? If we need to engage with our community partners to fill in the gap while our teachers have dedicated time to develop their skill sets, build more tools in their toolkit in order to teach in a block, to transition their courses from periods to block, we will engage with our community partners. If there are opportunities where we can have vendors or community members, when I visited Lennox, our seniors want to, how can we help? We want to help. Can we come and tutor? So we have community members that want to help. And if this is a plan B that we need to put in place so that the teachers have the space to do what they need to do during our year of transition, we will develop that. But at the end of the day, I understand that a lot of this seems different. And when fully known, because I haven't experienced that. I understand that people react to that differently. Some people are comfortable with change. Some people are fearful of change. But change is inevitable. We live in a society that's ever changing. And we can't be stagnant in the change. We need to support one another in order to get through our year of transition, because we will get to the block. We won't pull back. It is a priority. And I will say that again. Moving to the block is the priority, but we gotta take the trip. So I don't know, how many of you all like road trips? It's not me. If I can't get there in 6 hours, I have to fly. But my husband wanted to take a road trip from Brooklyn Park, Minnesota to Yazoo City, Mississippi. That is 15 hours nonstop. We stopped 3 times. So, was it enjoyable for me? No. But what it did was, it gave us time in the car together. It gave us time to connect. It also gave me the time to slow down. It didn't feel good. I was glad when I got there. And I'm sure teachers will be glad when we get to that block schedule. But we gotta take this road trip. We'll stop for snacks. We'll sit down in a restaurant to eat. We could actually eat dry. But we are going to get there together. And when we arrive at our destination, we can look back and say, we made it. So I appreciate each one of you. I know board members, the emails was firing off, and I appreciate you all just breathing through them so that we can direct the questions where they need to be directed, and that is to our building principals, because they are making the decisions in collaboration with their staff. And as board members, you all have the responsibility of the purse to decide how much money we get in order to actualize our strategic plan. And whatever you all say we have to play with, that's what we have to play with. And our job as administrators is to manage the expectations when it comes to presenting students with educational opportunities that address each one of their needs, so that they, not us, by our limitations, well, the barriers that we put into place, but that they can have the choice of who they are going to become, because every day of their being is getting them to who they are going to become. So I appreciate each one of you. And I will also say this, and then I'm gonna be quiet because it's late and I know we got one more topic. And I'm gonna release my administrators so they can go home because they gotta get up early. But I will say this. One of the things that is very important to me is how we treat each other as humans. And I am concerned with the level of professionalism that I am seeing when there is a distaste for decisions that are being made. I am concerned because I'm having triggers that is reminding me of the behaviors that I am seeing on a political front when there's disagreement with decisions that are being made. I truly believe that we create space, and I will always create space for people to express their voice. But one of the things that is a zero tolerance for me is the disrespect in how we communicate. We as educators and we as leaders, because we have the title, does not mean that you can say what you want to say, how you want to say it, and we are just supposed to sit and take it. That's unacceptable. I will treat people with respect, but I will not tolerate the disrespect. Not from myself, not for any of my administrators, not for my students, not for my teachers. That has to stop. Because you talk about the ecosystem of education, how are we going to attract our students to be teachers and educators when they see the adults treating one another the way that some people are treating each other here in St. Louis? But that has to stop. I am concerned. And I'm saying that here at the board table because I gotta be just as transparent as to what I'm seeing and what I am experiencing and what my other administrators are experiencing. That would drive people away. If you look around this table, the administrators, principals, and cabinet members that I have, I got the top of the line. And I'm concerned. Because why would you stay in an environment where you're not treated in a respectful way? So, I'll say that. Thank you. Thank you all as we walk together through this transitional year, as we go to our destination of a block schedule at the secondary, where we are fully committed to creating that learning space for our students. I would say that I think there was 3 more questions.
We good.
But I encourage any teacher, community member, student that still has questions about anything, please talk to your administrators. They have the answers. I say that again. Please talk to your administrators. They have the answers.
Can I just say thank you for the visuals, because I know this was like very important to the community, and me as well as a parent. When I got the email, I didn't understand what 5.5 schedule was, and I saw the emails from everybody who felt the same way I felt. So this was really helpful.
And mind you, this is a teacher view. This would be a reflective of the teacher schedule for next year. The student schedule, they will still be in class. They don't get preps.
Can we just, I know we're trying to be done. I just, first of all, it's late, and I know that folks here, will be greeting students at the door, in the 7 o'clock hour. I just want to say thank you for that. But I hope that people tune in. I know there's not that many folks here, but I hope people tune in. I think this type of dialogue and this type of conversation, to see the intentionality and the focus that's behind, and, to really understand what the leaders of this district are doing and why it's important. goes back to what we talked about earlier about how are we telling our story, because I think so much of this got lost in communication, and so I really hope people heard it and that we can find ways to share this out going forward. And I just want to thank you all for walking this journey with us and for being here late tonight, because it's one thing for us to do it, but this is above and beyond for you all, so thank you.
Well said. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And you said they get to go, right?
They get to go.
Okay, thank you.
And stay
Yes, we want to hear some opportunity to discuss this. All right, we do want to touch on one thing real briefly here. It doesn't have to be super long, but we were looking at their next listening session, and the question came up. I think we have 3 board members identified to be there for sure: Sarah, Virginia, and Celia to be there. But the question came up, should we have a dedicated topic for people to come to? We have had a history sometimes of not having that. We've been trying some of that this year to have some more dedicated topics that at least sort of create the energy for the kinds of things that we need to hear about, right? So that we're hearing about what we need to hear about. When we did our last one, I gave space for people to also share other things that were outside of that topic, as long as we had time to do that. But just trying to shore it up and keep people mostly focused on that, realizing that we have other ways for people to communicate to us via email, if they want to have public comment, if they want to email their administrators or whatever, that there's some ways to do that as well too. So is there anything more that you want to add there? Wow, anything related to that? I don't know. Okay, all right. So the question became, I think, was that you had a suggestion about a possible topic.
So one of the things that I suggested is that in light of all of the things that are happening at the federal level and just some of the concerns that may be bubbling in all of the uncertainty. And I know, Sarah, that funding, act of Congress, but there is the reality of, well, what's going to happen? We are a district that is very prideful about how we talk about racial equity, with our racial equity transformational strategic plan, with our racial equity policy, our gender inclusion policy, the language in our student Title IX. Out front, we are very overt about who we are and what we believe. But with the recent letter, where it was sent from the U.S. Department of Education that said that every department, State Department of Education, needs to certify that districts weren't violating any laws with their policies, is there a need to create the space with our community to have that conversation so that our community has an understanding of what the executive orders mean, what is the Department of Education, Minnesota Department of Education saying, what does that mean for us as far as our policy work? Because I know initially when it was the focus was on immigration, we did a lot of our work internally to ensure that we were doing right by our families and our students. But there was some murmuring in the community as to what is the district doing, where we have had it all under control. And we were being strategic about
Not giving away.
I didn't want to say it, but what she said. But now we're at a point where, okay, it's now getting to our structure. So is there a desire to create space to have a listening session with the community that centers around a lot of the policies which the board is responsible for, in relationship to a lot of the things that are happening on a federal. So that's where I kind of put that into.
And just to be clear, like we've said in the past, listening sessions tend to be a focus where we can hear from people. We don't often have the answers.
Correct.
Right? And that would be a thing that we want to be clear that this is not an opportunity to come and have the board answer questions, but for us, as you were saying, to give space to say, what is it that you're concerned about? Are you concerned that we are going to change our policies? Are you concerned that, you know, like what is it that you're feeling and seeing in terms of this stuff? So that's what we're suggesting. It's being a possible topic. And the schedule, it's 5 to 6:30?
5 to 6:30.
Is that what we, okay.
Yes. Board meeting, so there'll be a 30-minute break in order to give board members an opportunity to eat. We will start the board meeting at 7.
Which is slightly different than I think an email that went out earlier. But just to be clear, that's about 90 minutes. And again, that would give us some space for answering those questions. And then if there were others, like I said, previously I just asked people to kind of reserve to yeah, what would you say?
Does the board need to take action on changing your meeting time?
It's not changed though. 5 to 6:30 is what you advertised, right?
No, the
Board
board meeting was started at 7.
Oh,
We just have to give a
Notice.
3-day notice
Yeah.
of the change in
That's
time.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Okay. All right, so was there any thoughts, questions, concerns about that being a topic?
Are you sure you want me to be at the listening session if that's the topic?
Yes, we do.
I write-
I think that's the one you're supposed to be.
I mean, I think, right, I think it is an opportunity to speak, you know, it does give that opportunity to speak more freely, but again, the focus on trying to hear what people have to say, it's what we really want. And I think people who are particularly, maybe, like, that might be a lot to take in. I want to acknowledge that too. So I want to ask her, you know, like that, like, is it going to feel, depending on who shows up, depending on what they have to say, how we feel about that. But I do like the idea of having some focus on that and seeing, and like we said, if 100 people show up, that's great. We've heard from 100 people. If 5 people show up, it's great. We've heard from 5 people. But we want to give some of that opportunity for that to do something like that. Seems like a reasonable kind of way to use your time. So unless there's any sort of like, I think we're late. It's 9:30. I think we've been at this for 3 hours. There's always a possibility that we can adjust that slightly, but I think we wanted to have a discussion at this table and make that clear. And then again, I don't know. We've traditionally kept it to board members largely at the table. I don't know what the feeling is about administration being there. Sometimes we get pointed questions and we sit there and we're like, we don't know. And it's maybe too much to ask one person to do that, but I think there's a question that we as a board sometimes sit in these meetings, and particularly if this one's not recorded and if there's not an opportunity for people to like what's going to be the best ways to make sure that we can follow up on some of those things.
the only, I guess there are 2 things before we start. The one that Ken and Heather and I did that was virtual, that just got overwhelming for us because we didn't know any, the questions were so bombarded with questions. So it was frustrating not to have a focus, and just for Taylor and Celia, I liked the idea of having more of a focus so that it's not, it was a bazillion questions coming at us. And then following up with each individual who asked that became really overwhelming for Ken, Heather, and I. And I don't remember why Heather couldn't do it. It was a situation. So Ken and I took it up, but we were responding to like 25 different people. So it just got to be, and then it was like, the superintendent was also responding. It just got really overwhelming.
And I think some of that is at our expectation setting too, as much as we can with the listening sessions, how we communicate about it. That this is, we call them the listening sessions, but I'm hoping that the message can be sort of like, this is your opportunity to speak and for the board to listen, but it's not a Q&A. We don't call it Q&A, whatever, but I'm thinking that just making sure that it's clear to people too, as much as we can.
So that would be my question for Ashley. How are you going, how does one advertise that we're going to be talking about it, right? Because
Would you believe I'm working on it right now?
well, because I don't want to put Celia in a situation where she will, like, there's a group of people who are outside of St. Louis Park who hear about what we're going to talk about, and so they make it a point to come up to raise a ruckus or to. I don't want to be put in that situation necessarily, but I want to be transparent and at the same time.
I think the way that we will promote it is, this is an opportunity to speak on this topic, just like we did for the cell phone policy, which was the last one that we did. Even though people may come to the listening session and not talk about cell phone. I think that's what happened at your last one.
A little bit, I mean, or they just got off, or they.
But I think it was really successful to base it around.
Yeah, in a topic.
Yeah.
So we'll share a description of what this topic is with people and what to expect, but given current reality within the district, I would be expecting that this next listening session, you might have some questions that are not related to this topic.
Right. And I think that's a little bit of what we're asking about is like, what does that support look like for us to do that? Like either that's language that we can say, this is what you should do, or that's a contact name, or we have a member of cabinet there that can track on that or something like that. I think we're just looking for some level of support so that we can, because that's just a hard thing, and it can be hard when you have 3 board members in there and in a meeting, when you have possible topics, when it could be, somebody does want the railroad or want to talk for a long time. Most people were pretty respectful last time, though, I would say, for us. So it was pretty good about that, but most people were engaged and good about that stuff. But just, we might need some help there, just a little bit of support.
And I know I can make myself available for the listening session as well, and I can tap some of the cabinet members also to be present.
All right, well, unless there's again, there's some opportunities here to change your mind, but just wanted to get that clear right now and just see if that's good with everybody. Okay, with all that, then I'm just going to call us adjourned at, what time is it? 9:38. Thank you. Let's go home.
Wonderful.
They did, great.